Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel for another flea market finds episode. This is going to be a bunch of stuff that I picked at the outdoor flea market on August 11th. I do have one item here from the used tool store, this vise that I'll talk about in a bit. But first, let's look at the stuff that I picked. As always, I primarily look for machinist tools, but I also buy other items that just strike my fancy or other types of tools. And then sometimes just oddities in general. Let's take a look at this nice Federal indicator. I don't buy too many dial indicators anymore because I just have so many of them. And you know, there aren't too many out there that bring a whole lot of money. But this one, I kind of figured I was going to get a deal on it because it's missing the crystal. The face is very dirty, but that should clean up fine. But what I noticed was, A, it works perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with it. And B, it's a, well, B and C. It's an extra large dial face, larger than standard, which is kind of neat. Going to make it more difficult for me to source a crystal for it, but still kind of a neat, you know, differentiation from a regular Federal indicator. And it is also a long travel indicator. It does have the mount on the back, the lug, or you can also clamp it here. So what's nice about these is you can make some pretty easy brackets to put this on the ways of your lathe and have this touch the side of your carriage and give you really precise measurement of your carriage travel. Or sometimes people will make a bracket to mount this on a quill in a way that will allow them to use this to measure the depth of feed on a milling machine or a drill press. But I got this for, he wanted 10. I said to him, I was going to say 5, and he said 8. And I said, all right, I'm not going to quibble over 3 extra bucks. I got that for 8 bucks. That same gentleman also had a whole bin that was filled with a bunch of used end mills and cutters, mostly high-speed steel, but amongst them were these 3 fly cutters. So I picked out these 3 fly cutters. They're all, you know, home shop made deals by the looks of it. Nothing commercially made. And then amongst the box of cutters, I found this nice power tap. You can tell this is a power tap by the way it's got the spiral flutes in there that actually helps it clear the thread, clear the chips as it's powering through. So this is by design supposed to be able to go straight through without having to be backed out to break the chip. And this is actually in pretty good shape. It's a Jarvis, you know, like Iron Man's main man there, right? Jarvis. HSS, high-speed steel, 1.0265-12 unified thread. So not size I'm gonna have a use for, but maybe somebody will want to buy that from me. So I got that and the 3 fly cutter heads for 10 bucks. Another dealer that I've bought from before usually doesn't have machinist items, but I ended up digging through some boxes he had there. He usually has a pretty good crowd around his spot because he's very fair on prices. And so I actually watched people beat me to a couple of things. I did see a guy got away with a Starrett micrometer and a Brown & Sharp micrometer. I didn't actually see what was in the boxes, but I just asked him out of curiosity. He told me they were mics. So I've got so many of those, I didn't really care about that. But the one thing I did miss, I watched a guy pick up what looked to be like a 18-inch long rigid aluminum pipe wrench, and he asked the guy how much for the wrench, and he said 10 bucks. And that was a hell of a steal for that guy. I would have definitely snagged that if he hadn't gotten to it first. But when I was digging through the boxes, I did find a few items. I found this really kind of neat looking screw jack. Okay, it's got kind of a look to it like some of the smaller ones that I've come across, but it's got these brass knobs on the end of the handle. I mean, that's just a really sweet looking screw jack. I got that screw jack, one of these little hand vices that when I can buy them right, I tend to always try and pick them up. This one is nice because it's couldn't be more complete. It's still got the spring in it. It's got the original wing nut. Jaws are in pretty decent shape. So I was able to get these two pieces and this box with its contents, which turns out is it's actually a set of either carving or gravers tools. So I'm not sure if they're wood carving or gravers tools. This is an odd one, and this is an odd one. The rest of these are all Brookstone brand. And you know, when I first brought this box over to ask on the price, he said to me, he said, "Did you open that up and see what was in it?" As if to make sure that I saw what was in it, in case he thought that I was just buying the box. And I said, "Yeah." That kind of worried me. I thought he was going to want too much for it, but I said, "Well, how much are you going to want for that?" And he said, $5. So I said, "All right, I'll take that." I said, "I don't even care about the box." He said, "Well, the guy made the box, so kept it all together. I'll probably end up just selling the contents, and sadly enough, I'm probably going to end up tossing the guy's handiwork here." Oh, so what this ended up being is $15 for these 3 pieces. 5 of it is these gravers tools or engraving tools. And then, so I'm only into these for 5 a piece. I really can't get over how nice this screw jack is. Then I dug around through some other stuff he had there, and I came across a couple of number stamp sets. These I did not see any markings on, but the box looks early enough to indicate to me that they're probably US made. And the box looks early enough to indicate to me these probably are US made. And this little set right here, which clearly says made in the USA, this is the C.H. Hansen company. And these actually, these may have been used, but they're in excellent shape. So that's a nice little number set there, stamps. So I ended up putting together a deal on these 2 number stamp sets. This Craftsman brand new old stock nut splitter. The reason why I bought this was because I just recently went to use my nut splitter that I had in my toolbox and realized that when I went to turn it, the whole part in here was turning. And the reason why it was turning was because there was a pin inside here that had sheared. This one I noticed is a different design. This one, the shape of this chisel point is a cone. So this one, it doesn't matter, what angle it's at. The other one, it had a wedge. So it had to be perfectly vertical, and that's what the alignment pin did. This old tap wrench, I wish it was a Greenfield or something like that. It's a moldy oldie, but it is clearly marked. This is clearly marked the J.M. King and Company. J.M. King and Company of Waterford, which I'm going to guess it might be Waterford, Connecticut. No. Yeah, I don't know. And it's a number 27, I think. And then here it's stamped very neatly H.E. Colby on both sides. So I don't know if that's the owner and he had his own little stamp made up, or if that's a company name that this was used at. So kind of a neat old tap wrench. And then this knife and this carburetor. And I got all of this for $25. And I don't know how this actually breaks down, but let me talk about this knife and this carburetor. So the carburetor I had seen early on, and it caught my eye because it's a Japanese carburetor, so it probably came off of a dirt bike, Japanese dirt bike, probably like about 125cc. And I was thinking about how recently I've noticed that a lot of these vintage Japanese motorcycle parts are starting to bring pretty decent money on eBay. So this might be a good reusable, rebuildable carb for somebody that's restoring one of these bikes. So I don't know what this came off of, but it's a model PD. It says 55AB VK1, and then there's a PD on it. And the manufacturer of the carburetor is this Japanese company, Keichin. It's K-E-I-H-I-N, but then there's almost like a K in the middle there. I don't know if that's focusing, but kind of see the name on it. So I was thinking about putting this in my pile, and I was kind of not doing it. And then a guy came and he was looking at it, and he's talking about that it probably came up, he was talking it all up. So I'm thinking, oh, he's going to probably want to ask how much it is. And then he ended up just putting it back down and walking away. So then I asked the guy, I said, well, how much were you thinking for that carburetor? He said $4. So I obviously added that to my pile for $4. So actually I think it ended up being $24 for this. And so it was $4 for the carburetor, and then like $20 for the tap wrench, the 2 stamp sets, and this knife. Now when I first spotted this knife and pulled it out, I thought, oh, I hope this is a nice hunting knife, something really good. I opened it up, and lo and behold, oh look, it's a fillet knife. So I'm pretty sure this is a filleting knife for fish. It's got this neat little pouch for a stone that's missing. The stone's not in there. Looked all over this knife and I could not find a name on it anywhere, but it just seemed like it was really well made to me. Nice riveted handle. You knife guys could probably tell me whether or not you agree that the construction of this knife looks good. I know it's a lot of it has to do with, well, how good is the steel, right? Okay. No markings on the knife as to who made it. It does seem like it is the original holster for it, because the way this hooks over that part, the guard right there, and keeps it secure. Now on the back though, it is clearly marked. It's marked Randall Made Knives of Orlando, Florida. So any of you guys know anything about Randall Made Knives of Miami, Florida? Randall Made. So I don't know how popular these are. Well, if any of you viewers out there are knife guys, you probably are you're probably wondering, wow, what a deal I got on this thing. So apparently Randall knives are still being made today. The company's still in business, and boy are their knives pricey. And the only thing pricier are their vintage knives. I don't know what vintage this is. I haven't found an exact one like this sold on eBay yet, but I just found a scabbard, just a leather scabbard that looks just like this one on eBay. That just the empty scabbard sold for $87, and 19 bids on it. There's another scabbard sold for $97.50. Now those could be scabbards for rarer models, I don't know, but I'm sorting from lowest to highest. The cheapest knives that sold were $51 for the triathlete, which oh, and actually that's just for a scabbard also. And again, I'm searching for I'm looking at sold auctions on eBay of used Randall knife. So there are plenty of vintage Randall knives on eBay that have sold for hundreds of dollars. Not asking hundreds, sold for hundreds of dollars. So this might end up being the best deal, the best score I've made all year so far. Remains to be seen. What troubles me is that I can't find really any fillet knives. So maybe this isn't a filleting knife. I know fillet knives tend to have more of a curve at the end, so maybe I'm wrong about what type of knife this is. I did find one fillet knife listed, but it had, I actually found that listed several places. Apparently they had a model that was a fillet knife, but it had a stag handle. This appears to be a rosewood handle from what I could tell. Yeah, and again, there's no, oh wait a minute, there is something right on here. I just realized, right here on the blade, it does have a number. It says case XX. Alright, so I did a little bit of checking and feeling pretty foolish now. Many of you knife guys are now laughing at me hysterically because this is a Case brand knife, which it says Case XX. So somebody took a Case knife and stuck it in this very expensive Randall knife holster. So the holster is going to go to eBay. The Case knife apparently is worth well, a lot less. I haven't been able to find this exact model, the 507, so I'm gonna post online on the Case Collectors Club page just to see if anybody can tell me for sure what type of knife this is, if it's a boning knife. There is a Case 207 5.5-inch knife that looks similar to this, but it doesn't have this blade guard or whatever you call this part of the knife, and this end of the handle is rounded. So I think we're close to that series, but not quite the same thing. And if it is, this is probably not worth more than about 30 bucks. For what I paid for it, I'm certainly not complaining, but it just kind of stinks to get all excited about it, only to find out that, well, what I have here is not what I thought. And you know, and now that I look at it, this knife is swimming in this scabbard. There's like way too much extra room in there. This is a scabbard for a better knife, I think. Or a bigger knife, I should say. Alright, this tap wrench, J.M. King & Company, was an early manufacturer of taps, dies, and pliers. They were formed back in 1829, and then apparently they were reorganized in 1849 to become the J.M. King & Company. So these would be after 1849. I was not able to find out how long they were around. Apparently they made their name by coming out with a patent on a particular style of wire cutters and pliers called button pliers. So, you know, I don't know how collectible this kind of thing is, but somebody might really want this. I don't know. Oh, and also the Waterford is Waterford, New York, where the company was located. I got that information off of an interesting webpage called Alloy Artifacts. You might want to put that in your bookmarks if you're into really old tools. And also another page is WikiWrench. And on WikiWrench, I was able to find out that the company was in business after the founder passed away, left it to his daughter. She inherited the business, and guy who joined the business earlier on ended up staying on and managing it. They were in business until 1910, which means this is a pre-1910. This is a over 100-year-old tap wrench. Here's a couple of photographs off of WikiWrench, and you can see the top photograph is my wrench, and then the bottom two photographs, I've actually seen that style of wrench also. I don't know if I've ever had one, but I've come across them at the flea market. Usually they're in such rough condition I don't think about buying them. So one last thing about this tap wrench. Apparently back in the day, originally when you bought it, it came with these like 3 sets of these jaws for different sized taps. Couple of the few Starrett items that I was able to find today. This I found on a table all by itself. I think it was probably not spotted by anybody, or they didn't know what it was. And before I could even ask the guy, I was looking at him, and before I could even ask him what they were, what he wanted for them, he said like $2 or $3, I think. So I was like, yeah, I'll take them. So what this is Starrett part number 16A. Well, it's a Starrett 16A part number 7137 for number 711FG. So 711s are Starrett last words, and what these are their replacement tips, points. And there's actually 1, 2, 3, there's 5 of them in this box. Now 2 of them are 7136s and 3 of them are 7137s. And the difference apparently is the size of the little ball on the end. These are .062 and these are 0.035. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, want to stare at last word, that's what the little contact point looks like on the last word indicators. And another guy had only 2 machinist items on his table amongst all his other stuff, one of which was a import Chinese cheap 6-inch dial caliper, and this stare depth mic, and you know, a really old one like this that's only a 0 to 3. Normally I wouldn't pay much attention to it, but for one thing, it's actually in really pretty good shape. It's got all 3 rods, and it's actually a blade style. So it's got the blade, which lets you get into grooves. Even the wrench is there. And he really didn't know what to ask for it. So he says, make me an offer. I said, 15 bucks? He said, sure. So, good deal. Another one of the guys that I stop and talk to regularly. He hasn't had any machinist stuff really, not much at all in a while, but he did have a bucket there of stuff, and it was marked, you know, all the items in there were $1 each, or I think if you put together like 5, he was just trying to get rid of stuff. And amongst the stuff that was in there was this lathe dog, this drive dog for a lathe. So this is for use, clamps onto a part that is being held between centers on your lathe, and then this part right here is driven by a drive plate or a face plate on a lathe. And it is a Vulcan number 63. Got that for $1. Guy had some vintage electronic junk, for lack of a better term, and one of the few things that he had that I was interested in was I spotted this wattmeter, and I got it for 10 bucks. And it's a bird, which bird wattmeters are well known to be very well made wattmeters, but this is a really early one. The modern bird wattmeters that are coveted by a lot of radio repairmen are the ones that have what they call slugs that you can change and actually change the range, and they're just strictly watt meters. This is a combination watt meter dummy load, so you'll notice that there's no output on this. So this is for testing the wattage output of transmitters, and it looks like somebody might have been using this on CB radio. It's interesting to me that on the top here somebody put a little sticker, a little note to themselves, add 1 watt. So they were basically saying that they realized that when they checked this against another watt meter it was off, so they're telling you to add 1 watt to whatever the reading is. Now why that might be, it might be because they may have been using this on CB radio, which is 27 megahertz, and under here the data plate actually tells you that this is a Tourmaline watt meter model 612, and that the frequency range for this is 30 to 500 megahertz. So 27 would be a little bit below the spec for this meter. So it could be that that might be the reason why it doesn't read correctly, or maybe it's reading incorrectly in all of those frequency ranges, which would mean, yeah, needs calibration. The range on this, there's 2 ranges. The lower range is up to 20 watts and the upper range is up to 80 watts. You'll notice that on the little door right here it says low and high. So I've got one of these already. I don't remember what size it is, but if I recall correctly, I think the way that you change ranges on this is you have to take these little plugs out. Let me get this out of the way. You see, I just pulled that little plug out from here. It's like a little terminator. And then there's this one over here. So this one is hollow. This one actually has a little gold-plated pin in there. So if it's in this position, it's in high, and then if it's in this position, it's in the low range. And then this is just to keep the other port closed, to keep dirt, I guess, out of there or whatever. The dummy load, this part back here with these fins, it's actually filled with a type of oil so that it can dissipate the heat, and through convection current, air will flow across these fins and cool it down as you're transmitting. So when you're pushing like a full 80 watts into this thing, that's how it gets rid of the heat. I would venture to guess that if you were to open this up and get any of the oil out of this thing, it would probably be laced with, what the heck's that stuff? What's the stuff that was in Transformers years ago? Really bad for you, really well-known carcinogen then, nowadays. Not PVCs, PFCs, I don't remember, but point is, you never want to open one of these up and spill this stuff on you. It's interesting. It looks like you can loosen these screws and maybe push this up and remove the wattmeter from the dummy load. I wonder if there'd be a way to use this as an inline wattmeter. I don't know. Well, anyways, don't know if it works, but I took a chance on it for 10 bucks. Early in the morning, I came across a dealer who had this pair of clamps, and they are really rusty, and these screws are all seized up, so they really need some love. These are, I think, called a truss style clamp because of the way that the design is on the arms here. These are marked clearly CT Company, which is Cincinnati Tool Company. The model is a looks like a 510B is the model number. These are pretty big. Okay, on the back there's an H in a circle right there. That's Hargrave. So the Cincinnati Tool Company became, I think, Hargrave, or was bought out by Hargrave or something like that. These are still really early. They're a great size, but the condition was so bad that I really didn't want to get involved with them. But then I saw a guy while I was standing there. He came over and he looked at them and he asked how much for the clamps, and the guy says 10 bucks for the pair. You know, I was thinking that seemed like a good deal. And the guy he put them back down and he walked away. And I thought to myself, 10 bucks is a pretty good deal for those. And he didn't even think to counter them. He just walked away. I think maybe he just decided they were too far gone. So I was standing there and I said to the guy, I says, hey, I'll give you $5 for those clamps. And he said, sure. So I got this pair of clamps for $5. And you know, when I was walking around with them on my way back to the car, I got a lot of comments from tool guys that saw me with them and said, oh, nice clamps, even in the condition they're in. One guy was a dealer. I stopped to look at some of his stuff and he saw the clamps I was carrying, and he went on about them, giving me tips on how to clean them up. He suggested I soak them in white vinegar overnight and use a brush to get a lot of the heavy stuff off. So anyways, I did see one unfortunate thing, which is there's actually a crack right there in the truss on this one that I didn't spot. But the other one's good. And quite frankly, this one's still usable even with that crack. So I think I should probably spend some time and try and bring these back to life. And that brings us to our final item, which is this little bench vise. This is a looks like a 3-inch bench vise. And the reason why I bought this vise, I got this vise at the used tool store for 25 bucks. And the reason why I wanted this vise is because this is a vise that was made in Poland, and it's virtually identical to one I bought a couple of years ago that I have down in the shop, and it's got to be the same manufacturer. My running joke about the other vise is that it's a communist vise because it was from communist era Poland. It's probably a 1950s or 60s vise, and you know, it was a lot of people don't realize how recently in our lifetime, in my lifetime anyways, Poland was a communist country. And then there was this electrical union worker named Lech Walesa, who became the first president of Poland after Poland got its freedom from the USSR. But that happened in like the 1980s, for crying out loud. Which I know to some younger viewers that might seem like ancient history, but not to me. Anyways, this is the Polish vise, and got this symbol right here. You can see right here this little symbol that indicates the company that made this. I don't remember the name of it. Poland still has some companies making some pretty nice stuff as far as like machinery, tools, and things like that. But what's unique about this vise, and what caught my eye about the one that I bought previously, which, by the way, the other one of these that I have, I ended up getting that out of the same estate that I bought my Ford 5000 tractor from. But notice as I open this vise, this jaw is the fixed jaw. This jaw with the anvil part is actually the part that moves. So it's a unique design. It's actually, this whole casting right here rides on almost like ways, and these screws right here with the locking nuts, the jam nuts, are actually to adjust a jib. So over time, as this would wear from going back and forth, if it would loosen up, you could adjust these screws to push the jib in to compensate for it, just like the ways on a lathe or a milling machine. I thought that was kind of cool. It's also a swivel vise. Sometimes these are broken off. This one, they all seem intact. The larger version of this vise actually can bring some pretty decent money on eBay. I have no idea what the smaller one here is worth. I don't really care because I kind of like it, so I might hold on to this one for a while. Alright guys, so that's going to bring this episode to a close. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. Take care.